What was Harriet Tubman's greatest achievement? The place was Dorchester County, Maryland. The year was 1822 or thereabouts. The event, little Araminta Ross was born in slavery. From the beginning, it was clear she was tough. At 5 years of age, Minty Ross was hired out to do child care. By the age of 12, she was doing field work and hailing logs. In Minty's own words, "I grew up like a neglected weed." Despite a loving mother, these were hard years. Like so many slaves, Araminta lived with the fear that she would be separated from her family. After the Atlantic slave trade ended in 1808, great pressure was put on Maryland's eastern shore to provide slaves for the cotton fields in the deep South. Historians estimate that at this time, 10% of young slaves in the upper South were sold away from their families. We know that at least 2 of Minty's sisters met this fate. In 1842, Minty married a free black man named John Tubman. This did not alter Minty's slave status, but it did lead to a name change. Taking her mother's first name and her father's last, Minty Ross became Harriet Tubman. When her master died in 1849, Harriet made a life-changing decision. "I had reasoned out in my mind there was one of 2 things I had a right to, liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other." Harriet decided to run. It was about 100 miles from Harriet's slave home near Bucktown, Maryland, to the Pennsylvania border, and about another 20 miles to Philadelphia. Unable to persuade her husband to join her, Harriet took off on her own. She never disclosed the details of her escape. We know that it was mostly on foot, mostly traveling at night, mostly sticking to the north-south streams and the woods. It is remarkable that she made it. Over the next 11 years, Harriet would return to the eastern shore and Virginia at least 8 times to escort other fugitive slaves to freedom. Complicating her task was the Fugitive Slave Act, known in the North as the Bloodhound Act. This act, passed by Congress in 1850, required Northerners to turn in escaped slaves. Harriet now faced danger in the North and South. In her trips to rescue slaves and transport them to Canada, Harriet did not work alone. She was part of a secret network known as the Underground Railroad. The railroad had no rails, and except for the occasional hidden basement, it had no underground. Rather, it was a series of safe houses strung out along routes that extended from the slave border states to Canada. The safe houses were owned by people, white and black, who hated slavery and hated the Fugitive Slave Act.